As I started to learn how the brain learns to read, it was very interesting to figure out that the brain isn't built technically to read on its own. So that explains why we go through so much to teach students to learn how to read. I taught kinder for 2 years, and we went through so many different processes and activities and foundational skills to teach the students how to read. We start with, of course, letter recognition, making sure they know all their letters, and then going into letter sounds, making sure that they know all the letter sounds, and then, of course, you go through the digraphs and the certain letters that might say a different sound for whatever reason at a certain point. And then finally putting those letters together to make words, and then words into sentences, and then learning how to read. And it's such a grueling process, especially for young students. But of course, that is when we want to teach them how to read, is at that young age. And so I teach a reading program for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. It is called Read 180, and it's a program for students that are struggling with reading. And it has been the most amazing process of learning how to teach students to read when they're already older. They're kind of stuck in their own ways. And so something that one of the things that I really try to do, one of the characteristics that I try to do, is to bring things back logically to the students, to bring the concepts that they are reading back to them to where they can comprehend. Because at this point in the older grades, when they're reading, they can read, but a lot of times they're not comprehending what they're reading. And so I try to bring it back to real world situations for them logically and intuitively for them, so that they can grasp the concept and realize, okay, I did read that sentence. I did remember reading that. And so that is one thing that I do. I also try to make sure that I am not, when I tell them that it's important to read and I want them to do something, I try to do it also. So I try to avoid conflict with the students, because I don't want them to get frustrated and not want to do something for me, but I want them to be able to do it because they see me doing it. They see it working for other students. They see other people being successful with what they're doing. So that is something that I try to do a lot of times in my classroom, and especially with the Read 180 program. Another thing that I like to do, another characteristic that I read about, is trying to design the activities for the students that will grasp their attention and that they will want to do. If you are reading a story as a group, you might want to look up a video for that story or do a role play for that story. Bring the story to life for the students so that they can feel engaged. Read 180 is a computer program, and we do 20 minutes on the computer program, 15 minutes in a small group with me at my desk. And the students love being able to work on the computer program because it caters to their needs, what they are working on. So if I have a student that's at Lexile 500, it's giving them stories and questions and activities to do that are in the 500s, while the person next to them might be at a Lexile that's 200, and they're getting different stories that are catering to their Lexile level, and their questions are based on what they can answer, what they can comprehend. So I think making sure that the activities are catering to each student and to the way they learn, because every person learns different. And so the only way that we're going to teach students that are struggling, especially students that are struggling with reading, is to cater to where they are lacking, to build that bridge, to stand in the gap for them and say, okay, you're here, we need you to be, you're at a 200 Lexile, we need you to be at a 500 Lexile by the end of the year. So we're going to try to bridge that gap and try to get you to where you need to be. So definitely one thing that I preach so much to a lot of teachers who ask me what I think of the Read 180 program, what I think of teaching reading to students that are struggling and are stuck in their ways because they're in the older grades. What is one thing that they can do? And I just tell them to cater to them, meet them where they are. Don't expect these students, if they are on a first grade reading level and they are in the 5th grade, you cannot expect them to do 5th grade work when they haven't mastered first grade work, when they haven't mastered that first grade reading. And it's nearly impossible for these students, and it's just so defeating to them when they realize they can't do it, or they put it in their mind that they can't do it because they're struggling. And it's hard for me to grasp that teachers may be forcing these kids to do something that they cannot do, and I cannot imagine the frustration and the just the defeat that they may feel when they can't do it because they are not at that level yet. So definitely catering to the students, to their needs and to their learning abilities, and standing in that gap for them can help them tremendously with reading. And the fourth, the fourth characteristic that I really believe in a lot is just having an organized classroom, having a clean classroom, having something that's welcoming, having something that's very homey, for the students to come to, where they feel comfortable, where it doesn't feel like a classroom. My classroom consists of one desk. I have 5 student chairs. I have 2 Big Joes that are kind of like the lounge couches. I have 3 bean bags. I have wobble chairs. I have carpets that the kids can sit on because I want them, when they come in, that they are comfortable. I want them to feel at home. I want them to feel safe. I want them to be ready to learn. And it's so uncomfortable sitting at a desk in a chair and you're already frustrated because you can't do whatever it is that the teacher's asking you to do. And so I don't want them to feel basically like they're in jail. I want them to feel comfortable. I want them to feel like they are in a safe place where they can learn. And I've had a lot of students tell me that my classroom feels homey and that they love it because they can get comfortable and they can focus and they can feel like they can be themselves, because it doesn't feel like, an uptight classroom where we have to act a certain way and we have to be a certain thing. But it's kind of like you're at home where you're relaxed, or you feel like you can do your best because you're comfortable. Students are going to do work for you if they feel comfortable around you. And so that is one thing that they get to do in my classroom. They get to get their laptop and sit on the floor, or sit at the desk, or sit at the wobble chair, or sit on the bean bag, and they get to wherever they feel the most comfortable, where they feel like they are going to do their best work. And so that is one of the major characteristics about how the brain learns, is that the brain is going to learn in a less hostile situation. The brain is going to soak in the information that it wants to because of the environment that it's around. If the environment is crazy hectic or is very intimidating, the brain is going to shut down and that student's not going to learn anything. But if the environment is enjoyable and is comfortable and is homey and is welcoming, the brain is going to relax, and it's going to give that brain the power to soak up all the knowledge that it needs to, because it's in that state of being ready to learn. I have seen so many different things with students learning how to read from kindergarten to 5th grade. Students struggle with reading, and it's hard sometimes because there's just something in there, and it's so hard to explain, but there's something in the brain that sometimes doesn't click for a student. I have 5th graders that are reading on kindergarten, 1st grade levels, and it's just something that doesn't quite click until it clicks. And it's so weird to see. And with my reading program with Read 180, you see how this program caters to, like I said, each individual, each student, where it meets them where they are. And so I think that's important for teachers to grasp all of the concepts that help the brain learn the best and implement them in the classroom, like the 4 concepts that I talked about. Making things logical for the students, bringing things to life, to real world examples was the first one that I talked about. The second one was making sure that the student feels like they are given work that they themselves and other people are capable of doing. And that's maybe doing it yourself as a teacher, making sure that your body language is right, and that you're using a good tone with the students, and that you are having that welcoming environment. And then the third one that I talked about was catering to the students, to their learning, bridging that gap for them. And then the fourth one, making that classroom welcoming and homey for the student, so that they are ready to learn. Reading is an amazing thing, and I think a lot of teachers should read how the brain learns to see really how it does learn, and how, as teachers, as educators, how we can cater to these students and how we can help them be the best readers that they can be.